At 83, Eddy Mitchell has condensed several lifetimes into one overflowing trajectory. Once the embodiment of rock rebellion in France, he now stands as a timeless pillar of popular culture, wealthy, introspective, and quietly savoring the empire he built from the humblest foundations. Beneath his gravelly voice and sharp wit lies a journey marked by discipline, excess, and resilience. The luxury he cultivates today has nothing to do with flashy watches or private jets. It resides in the serenity of a man who learned the hard way that wealth loses all meaning if you don't know how to master it. Claude Moyne, universally known by his stage name Eddy Mitchell, was born on July 3, 1942, in a Paris still scarred by the aftermath of war. The son of a bus driver and a bank clerk, he grew up in the working-class neighborhood of Belleville, a bustling maze of lively alleys, overcrowded buildings, and an energy geared toward daily resourcefulness. His childhood unfolded without frills, in cramped apartments with prospects limited to the immediate urban horizons. Yet, from his earliest steps, a creative restlessness drove him. His mind wandered far beyond the Parisian cobblestones, captivated by the flickering glow of American movie theaters and the emerging pulse of rock and roll. He spent entire afternoons with his father watching westerns and Hollywood melodramas, discovering Gary Cooper, John Wayne, and Orson Welles long before picking up a microphone. Music came later, through crackling jukeboxes, imported vinyls, and the rebellious aura of Elvis Presley or Chuck Berry. As a teenager, Mitchell was already consumed by the sound and attitude of transatlantic rock. He didn't just imitate it, he aspired to fully embody it. In the late 1950s, he co-founded Les Chaussettes Noires, an undisputed pioneer of French rock. Their style was raw, electrifying, and unprecedented for a French audience still rooted in realist chanson. In 1961, the group sold over 2 million records, a resounding feat driven by the hit Daniela, which topped the charts. For young Claude Moyne, renamed Eddy Mitchell, it wasn't just the thrill of fame, it was his first tangible encounter with money. But notoriety also brought tensions. In 1963, the group splintered under the weight of egos and financial disputes. Mitchell took a bold gamble, a solo career. A risk that would seal his destiny. Going solo granted him unprecedented artistic and financial freedom. Unlike many peers who squandered their earnings, he early on mastered the art of turning fame into solidity. His mantra was clear: work hard, keep control, never delegate your worth. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, he recorded in London, Nashville, and Memphis, collaborating with heavyweights like Jimmy Page or Big Jim Sullivan. Albums like Rocking in Nashville, Sur la route de Memphis, or Claremont à l'eau became instant classics. He was no longer a mere imitator, he became the bridge between American groove and French sensibility. With each release, he solidified his assets, royalties, performance fees, full ownership of his catalog. By age 40, Eddy Mitchell was no longer the turbulent Belleville teen. He had transformed into a trademark, an artist mastering not just music, but longevity. Yet, behind this rise, turmoil was already brewing. Fame, grueling tours, and the traps of the rock lifestyle would soon put him to the test. Eddy Mitchell has always been disarmingly frank about his dark sides. In his confessions, he laughs at his missteps, but they nearly destroyed him. At the peak of his fame, his life spun into a frenzied carousel of excess. He chained over 50 concerts a year, sometimes crisscrossing Europe to meet crushing financial obligations. "I didn't snort cocaine for the high," he once confessed. "I took it to keep the tempo." Powder became a crutch to endure the infernal rhythm of success. But his main demon wasn't drugs, it was money. In 1979, after 18 years of marriage, he divorced Françoise Lave, mother of his 2 eldest children, Eddy and Maryline. The breakup was violent and ruinous. The judge imposed alimony he still pays today, over 4 decades later. To cover his marital debts, he embarked on a marathon tour of 200 dates, singing on the edge of exhaustion, addiction, and despair. This odyssey transformed him forever. In the early 1980s, Mitchell was at his breaking point. His addictions worsened, his finances faltered. He picked up another perilous habit: gambling. Parisian casinos became his nocturnal haunt, poker tables supplanting the stage as an outlet. When you leave your wife at 2 p.m. to come home at 7 a.m. just to dissect a hand of cards, you know it's time to stop, he wrote in his autobiography. He had squandered not only colossal sums but his inner peace. Then Muriel Bell appeared, the woman who would pull him from the abyss. She gave him an uncompromising ultimatum: gambling or me. This crossroads marked a decisive turn. Mitchell chose love. With her unwavering support, he wrote a letter to authorities to ban himself from all casinos in France. An extreme measure that finally freed him. He quit gambling, gradually tamed his dependencies, and rebuilt his finances from the ashes. The man once captive to his aura learned to exist differently, more calmly, more wisely, with regained measure. Muriel became his rock. They married in 1980 and welcomed a daughter, Pamela, a few years later. Johnny Hallyday, his eternal brother-in-arms, became the godfather, sealing one of French chanson's most iconic friendships. Mitchell's gratitude toward Muriel remains unshakable. He often repeats that she is the reason for his survival and the spark behind introspective ballads like Le Cimetière des Elephants. His redemption wasn't just emotional, it was financial. Under Muriel's guidance, he learned to manage his fortune shrewdly, invest in real estate, and secure his artist rights. The scars of pain turned into a doctrine of control. For the first time, he wasn't chasing fame or money. He built a lasting legacy, the empire of a rock icon. By the dawn of the 1990s, Eddy Mitchell had transformed from a shooting star into a discreet magnate. While many of his contemporaries faded, he possessed a rare commodity: lucidity. He didn't chase glitz or adulation. He assembled an empire quietly, note by note, brick by brick. His master asset remains his catalog. Over 500 titles recorded between 1960 and 2025 still air on radio waves, streaming platforms, and TV channels in France and Belgium. His royalties bring in an annual flow of 200,000 to 400,000 euros, according to say some metrics. It's not Hollywood opulence, but in the French music landscape, it ranks him among the top 50 singer-songwriters after 6 decades. Anthems like Sur la route de Memphis, La Dernière Séance, or Pas de Boogie Woogie remain radio staples, generating royalties long after the spotlights dim. But Mitchell's true wealth transcends music. From the early 1980s, once his path stabilized, he dove into real estate. An intuition that sealed his lifelong independence. His first big move was an apartment in Paris's upscale 16th arrondissement. The apartment, sober and refined, became his Parisian base and a symbol of his rejection of ostentation. "I've never liked showing off," he once said. "Comfort is enough for me." A few years later, he made the decisive purchase, a villa on the hills of Saint-Tropez. At the time, he was short 50,000 francs to close the deal. The seller granted him an interest-free loan, repayable over 10 years, a rare gesture of trust. Today, the property is worth several million euros and remains his cherished haven. Nestled at the end of a steep, winding path, it overlooks the Trapezian Gulf with a breathtaking view of the Mediterranean. Inside, a standout room, a private screening room lined with vintage posters, Jerry Lee Lewis vinyls, and sepia photos of Hollywood's golden age. It's not just a house, it's a mirror of the man, nostalgic, erudite, and discreetly eccentric. His love for cinema also permeates his non-music career. From 1982 to 1998, he hosted La Dernière Séance, a weekly show dedicated to American classics. The program became cult status and still earns him rights through reruns on Canal Plus and Art. Meanwhile, he built a solid filmography with Coup de Torchon, Le Bonheur est dans le Prix, or La Tuttle. These diversifications shielded his stability from industry upheavals. By the mid-2000s, Eddy Mitchell achieved what few artists do: absolute financial mastery. His net worth then ranged from 15 to 20 million euros and kept growing. But for him, money was never a banner. It was a tool for peace. "Money doesn't last forever," he quips with a smirk, "but it helps you sleep soundly when you manage it well." For Eddy Mitchell, Saint-Tropez isn't a glamorous postcard, It's an absolute sanctuary. He discovered the village at 17 and instantly fell for its raw light, relative silence, and the unique way time flows differently there. Since I was a kid, I've loved Saint-Tropez, he told Le Parisien. 40 years ago, I was lucky to buy a nice house in the woods thanks to my neighbor. That little house became one of his most precious and costly jewels. The villa perches on the Gulf's heights, accessible only by a narrow, chaotic road. It's isolated, shielded from tourist bustle and paparazzi. To reach it, you wind through pines and rocky paths until the Mediterranean unfolds in a vast azure arc. The house is bathed in light, welcoming, with large bay windows capturing the sun at all hours. Every corner reflects Mitchell's taste for comfort over opulence. Big tables for hosting friends and family, warm tones, an atmosphere suited to conversation rather than display. But what makes the property unique is its beating heart. The private screening room, surrounded by posters of Forbidden Planet or High Noon, shelves loaded with Jerry Lee Lewis vinyls and books on Orson Welles. It's where Mitchell spends hours rekindling his passion for cinema. For him, film and music are inseparable languages. It's also in this room, far from the spotlights, that he writes, reads, revisits old lyrics, or prepares projects with his son Eddy, now a music publisher. The house does come with a literal cost. It costs me a fortune, he admitted to Le Journal du Dimanche. I bought everything I wanted, and since I'm not into cars, it was houses instead. The one in Saint-Tropez is expensive, but I don't regret it. Maintenance and security swallow several €1,000 monthly. Yet, for Mitchell, this price is the cost of freedom, a refuge from celebrity noise where he can finally set his own pace. After canceling his 2025 summer tour for health reasons, he chose to extend his stay there. At 83, the villa is no longer just a residence, it's a place of recovery. Surrounded by Muriel and Pamela, he spends mornings gazing at the Gulf and evenings listening to old records or hosting longtime friends. The more time passes, the more time I spend here, he admits. In this haven of peace, far from Paris and showbiz chaos, Mitchell's vision of luxury reveals itself. No diamonds or yachts, but silence, memory, and the comfort of a life earned through sweat. How did Eddy Mitchell build his fortune? Few French singers have addressed money with as much frankness as Eddy Mitchell. He never pretended to be saintly or hid the cost of his choices. You know, he once told a journalist, money doesn't last forever, especially when you've made as many mistakes as I have. His path is a lesson in excess and discipline, a roadmap of loss and rebuilding. At the height of his glory, his relationship with money was chaotic. His first financial setback came from gambling. In the 1970s, poker and casinos devoured his nights. He described Parisian circles as his second homes, chasing the illusion of easy money. When you leave home at 2 p.m. and come back at 7 a.m., he later admitted, you start measuring what you're losing. This addiction threatened his marriage and drained a large chunk of his savings. Then came a disastrous investment in a restaurant, another costly mistake that forced him to rethink his business instincts. But the harshest blow was his 1979 divorce from Françoise Lave. The alimony he still pays today is a constant reminder of that era. Totaling €8,000 to €12,000 monthly, these payments amount to millions over 45 years. To meet his obligations, he once accepted a grueling tour of 200 concerts, admitting he used cocaine just to keep up. Those years aged him faster than time, but they forged his sense of control. After marrying Muriel Bell in the early 1980s, Mitchell made a radical shift. He quit gambling, avoided risky ventures, and refocused on what he mastered: music, cinema, real estate. He surrounded himself with savvy advisors, built a network of reliable accountants, and learned to scrutinize every contract line by line. He often says the key to wealth isn't talent, but longevity. His discipline turned what could have been a fleeting career into a 60-year empire. Today, his fortune is estimated at 20 to 25 million euros, about $25 million. Experts assess that roughly 40% comes from real estate, 25% from financial investments, and 20% from music royalties. Even at 83, his songs generate royalties, while reruns of La Dernière Séance bring modest but steady income. His wealth doesn't reach the extravagance of his late friend Johnny Hallyday, but it surpasses that of Jacques Dutronc or Michel Polnareff, proof that patience often trumps spectacle. When asked his greatest luxury, Eddy Mitchell doesn't hesitate. Time, he says, time to rest, time to choose what I want to do. I worked 60 years to afford it. These words sum up a life of lessons, earned, not inherited. In an industry built on illusions, Mitchell's success rests on something far rarer, realism. At 83, Eddy Mitchell no longer chases fame, fortune, or recognition. He's known them, tamed them, and survived. What matters now is what remains once the noise fades. His friends call him Schmal, a nickname from the 1960s when he was a cheeky young rocker in Les Chaussettes Noires. Today, that name means so much more, the last gentleman of French rock. Unlike so many artists who died young or broke, Mitchell turned his talent into stability. His fortune, estimated at about 25 million euros, doesn't tell the whole story. Behind that figure lie 60 years of toil, endless tours, and thousands of hours in studios or on sets. He knew the extremes of success and solitude without ever sinking. I lived like a rock singer, he says, but I thought like an accountant. This balance between rebellion and reason defines him better than anything. Family has become the calm center of his later years. Muriel, who once forced him to choose between love and gambling, remains his closest companion and most trusted advisor. Together, they've built a discreet life between the Parisian apartment and the Trapezian villa. Their daughter Pamela is grown, and the house often livens up with visits from longtime friends and musicians. His two eldest from his first marriage, Eddy and Maryline, have long been part of his life after rockier years. His son Eddy Moyne followed in his footsteps but behind the scenes, working in music publishing, rights management, and preserving the family catalog. In his rare interviews, Mitchell speaks little of financial inheritance. My kids don't need me to make them rich, he says. What they need is to understand what work means. His legacy isn't just musical, it's moral. He embodies a generation that forged careers without shortcuts, instant fame, or social media. In an era where many stars burn bright and fade, Eddy Mitchell's light has endured for over 6 decades, quietly illuminating French culture with authenticity and elegance. In February 2025, France awarded him an honorary Victoire de la Musique for 60 years of career. It's not just another trophy, but a kind of farewell, a tribute to a man who gave his country a true soundtrack of life. As he now spends his days in the calm of Saint-Tropez, the once restless Belleville kid seems to have finally found peace, not in luxury, but in gratitude. He still listens to his old records, sometimes humming a chorus, and when journalists ask if he regrets anything, his answer is simple: no, I made mistakes, but they taught me to live better, and I'm still here. That's all that matters. Eddy Mitchell's life proves that success isn't measured by what you earn, but by how you keep it and spend it. From a Parisian working-class kid to one of France's wealthiest and most respected musicians, he showed that time, loyalty, and love can outshine fame. So, what do you think? Has Eddy Mitchell truly found the secret to happiness? Or does his story prove that even legends must pay the price of success? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about music legends and their hidden lives.